What up, YouTube? Brochosaurus here, guys. It is officially, and IGN has officially published their review of Diablo 4. Let's check it out and see what they had to say about it. Let's go!
Like seeing your favorite band play their greatest hit live, Diablo 4 is completely awesome to behold, even when you know exactly how the song's going to go. It may not try to push the boundaries of ARPGs, but the tweaks, improvements, and borrowed ideas it does introduce have made this the best Diablo's ever been. Finely tuned combat, extensive build options, and stellar graphics are all among the most impressive in the genre, and its endgame activities are shockingly well thought out.
I mean, compared to Diablo 3, I'd say the aesthetic of Diablo 4 fits itself way better for a Diablo game than Diablo 3 did. So that's one of the things.
A weak story and some irritating bugs do occasionally throw a wet blanket over the fires of hell, but the 80 hours I've spent in Sanctuary have still been overwhelmingly positive. And even after all that demon slaying, I'm excited to play a whole lot more.
Break the chains and discover who you were meant to be. Break the chains.
Diablo 4 largely succeeds at modernizing the depths of hell enough to finally match its more recent ARPG peers, like Path of Exile or Lost Ark. You and up to 3 friends are once again sent on an endless string of exciting dungeon crawls where mastering your abilities and optimizing your DPS are generally more important than an engaging story or explaining the insane diarrhea of flickering lights that currently occupies the screen. Running dungeons once again captures that enjoyable, compelling loop of killing hordes of enemies, completing objectives, and downing bosses. And doing side quests to learn more about the world's lore is usually a very good time too.
I hope you've lined your...
I'll be honest, I'm usually not a side quest guy, but I do quite enjoy some of the side quests that I did play in the beta for Diablo 4. They're actually pretty fun.
Pockets with healing drafts.
If you were hoping Diablo 4 would shock the ARPG world with massive innovations to the genre, however, you're likely to be disappointed in that regard. Blizzard mostly seems content to play it safe by making smart but unsurprising changes to the ARPG formula, with things like more customizable skill trees and more diverse playstyles between classes.
I mean, that makes sense
That
too,
might
to do
sound
that.
overly familiar, but this strategy has resulted in a game that's unbelievably well designed, succeeding at practically everything it tries. Diablo 4's story probably isn't going to win any awards, but it's still a massive step in the right direction compared to its predecessor.
Yeah, I mean, just the
Quest to
aesthetic
find
alone
and stop
for
Lilith,
Diablo 4.
daughter of one of the primevals of hell, after she unleashes her fury upon Sanctuary, serves as a fantastic kicking off point.
Dude, this part of the freaking cinematic right here, the cutscene, if you guys played it in the Diablo 4 beta, it was probably one of my favorite cutscenes of all time. I'm not gonna lie. It was actually pretty brutal, and it was great.
Gone are the days of WWE-like voice performances and dreadfully cheesy dialogue.
Now, our true work begins.
The Queen of Succubi is one of the most complex villains the series has ever seen, with motivations that even made me question the justness of my own cause.
And now, all that you might have been has been stolen from me.
But before you get any real payoff for what's expertly set up in the first act, you'll spend most of the next 4 going on tangentially related errands with more filler than a packing peanut factory.
We're not here to collect.
The result is an interesting but disjointed story, which is a real shame, because anytime Lilith is on screen, it's engrossing stuff, but she's largely hidden behind a curtain waiting for the final act of the campaign, with a payoff that then doesn't stick the landing.
This can't be.
The ending does at least nicely set up a whole host of possibilities for Diablo 4's inevitable updates and expansions, but it's hard not to feel let down by what this story could have been. Thankfully, rolling credits in a Diablo game means you've only just finished the appetizer, not the main course. When
Right.
it comes to the things that really matter, like combat, build crafting, hunting for gear, and especially the endgame, Diablo IV absolutely knocks it out of the park. All 5 character classes are a ton of fun to play as. The rogue darts around to deal extreme damage in an exhilarating...
Well, and I think another thing about the end game as well with Diablo 4 is they've added so much content after the story, so you can go and go above and beyond and do these special quests to get better loot. You can do PvP. They're adding season updates every season for the game until who knows when. So that's great that they've done all that for the game. So they're going to keep it alive for quite some time.
high-risk, high-reward trade-off. The sorcerer creates horrifying cocktails of destruction, like this disgusting lightning build I brewed up to stun everything around me constantly. The necromancer raises and manipulates the corpses of fallen enemies to carry out their foul desires. The barbarian is an expert in all forms of Hulk smashing, who can charge forward to destroy everything in their path. And the druid uses their anamorph abilities to wail on demons, with probably the most build diversity of any class.
I mean, I felt like all the classes that I played were fun. The only problems during the beta with a lot of those classes were the balance issues between them. And I think that Blizzard actually took the time and listened to the audience, and they went through and made those changes and balanced them out quite a bit. It's going to be really fun to see the end result.
Gear substantially affects the paths you might choose to take a character down. For example, you might get a magical pair of pants that heal you when standing close to enemies, warranting a shift in your build from slaying enemies from afar to something close quarters. Or maybe, like me, you'll get devilishly lucky when you find a weapon that sometimes casts 2 lightning spells for the price of 1, leading to some absolute mayhem. Trying out new builds and experimenting with powerful equipment is one of the best parts of Diablo IV. I spent most of my time on my sorcerer, where I continuously discovered new and extremely rude ways to be the best glass cannon I could be, like equipping an ice shield that froze enemies for the sin of attacking me to remove said shield.
That's pretty sweet.
Available to optimize your character are so numerous that it can be pretty dizzying at first, even for a Diablo veteran like me. But when properly mastered, this is easily one of the best build crafting toolboxes of all time. Whether it's the dense skill trees, the endgame paragon boards and powerful glyphs that can be upgraded and socketed into them, the plethora of loot options across various world tiers and rarity levels, the gems and vendor upgrades you can use to make that equipment even better, or the fact that gear perks can be tweaked to optimize them for a certain build. Blizzard seems to have thought of just about everything. And all that control meant...
Plus, don't forget the gambling. You can gamble your gear. Oh god, yes, I love gambling. Yes, yes, daddy.
I never came close to feeling like my time wasn't being respected when a loot drop didn't happen to go my way. Diving into the bone-riddled halls of this ancient tomb or this demon body part exhibit is a consistent joy. No matter what class you've chosen, shredding your way through piles of wretched reprobates is usually effortless fun that lets you flex your unrivaled power.
100% agree, and on top of that, a side note, I will add that throughout the story campaign, when you go into any of these dungeons, they're set up really good. They actually took their time and made them look incredible, and I've been overall enjoying the story campaign element of this game.
Though some of the more difficult activities, like nightmare dungeons, are bound to put those skills to the test. There's also a good chance you'll run into a random event that might have you rescuing some poor lost souls or getting attacked by the Butcher, a familiar demon who enjoys meat hooks more than I thought possible. Admittedly, regular minions have very few unique mechanics I could discern in the seconds it took to send most back to hell with my coldest regards. But you do get the occasional breath of fresh air, like shamans that summon new enemies to the battlefield, making their executions a high priority, or skeletons that slowly shamble toward you with big beefy shields.
Big
Dungeon
beefy
bosses
shields.
have a bit of a similar inconsistency. I can only fight so many big floating demon wizards called the Curator or some such nonsense before it all just blends together into one big pile of satisfyingly defeated gore.
Honestly, I'm not too sure how the solo campaign is. I honestly prefer playing more with friends. So I don't know how hard it is on solo, but I know with friends it's still actually increasingly a little more difficult, especially when I was playing on World Tier 2 the entire time.
But others are much more memorable, like one where a laughing cultist repeatedly summoned waves of freaks until he ran out of steam and was quickly turned into a bowl of mashed potatoes by me and my friends.
A bowl of mashed potatoes.
Friends, Diablo IV is great for making them, as an online connection is required to push back the forces of evil. While this comes with the expected rare hitches, like getting disconnected or having to wait in short queues to play during a particularly busy time, the benefits far exceed the drawbacks. There's a much greater sense of discovery now, as you encounter other players out in the wild or murder them in cold blood in a PvP zone. And those chance encounters when you're taking down a world boss, for example, can turn into new online friends. It's especially cool that trading and clans seem to have greatly increased in prominence compared to previous Diablo games, and there's a real sense of community around taking down endgame group activities together. That's the kind of magic you can get in an online game, and I'm very excited to see what ridiculous shenanigans the community gets up to.
End game for the end times.
Optimizing your build and coordinating with your squad means nothing if there aren't endgame activities waiting to be conquered.
Right.
And Diablo IV has quite possibly the best day one endgame experience I've seen. Once you've beaten the campaign,
Tree
you'll
of
be able to run
Whispers.
bounties for the extremely creepy Tree of Whispers, which spawns new activities infinitely in exchange for high-level loot drops. Doing so at higher world tiers also gives you keys to nightmare dungeons, which are more challenging versions of existing levels that add crazy stuff, like an invincible crystal that magically chases you while you fight souped-up enemies. I was around level 43 when I finished the
I didn't know that
campaign,
much.
but at level 50, you'll also be ready to tackle the first Capstone Dungeon, a mostly by-the-numbers dungeon that serves as a power check to unlock the third world tier, and which grants access to a variety of new activities and loot drop ranks. One completely awesome addition are Helltide events, which cause blood to rain from the sky in certain zones and uber-deadly enemies swarm everywhere. Killing them and collecting nonsensically named aberrant cinders without dying allows you to open
I forget what the perk was for doing blood. What was it? Blood tier events or something like that?
special chests that are positive.
Or Helltide events. That's what it was. I forget what the reward was for doing these.
Positively crammed with sacred loot, like this.
Okay, well,
But
I guess that says it
PvP
all.
is possibly the endgame activity with the longest tail. You'll find 2 PvP zones in Sanctuary, where you compete to slay
Better
NPC
loot.
enemies to collect materials while keeping your head on a swivel to defend against rival players who might decide to kill you and take your resources for themselves. Running around in these chaotic zones is completely nerve-wracking and hilarious, especially since even your own party members can betray you by scooping up your valuable materials since they aren't shared. You might even be tempted to leave the party to rid yourself of that pesky friendly fire protection and lash out at a former ally.
I don't know. I think it's good that the loot system isn't shareable, because I know I was playing Diablo 2 like a month ago, and it was shareable on Diablo 2. So like we had to kind of figure out, okay, well, do you want this? Do I want that? You know, and base that off that. Whereas here, it's like, it's just drops for you, and you don't have to worry about your teammate getting that loot or whatever. So personally, I think it's better
Then
this
at
way.
level 70, you get another Capstone Dungeon to unlock the final world tier for even better loot, and there's yet another final endgame dungeon designed for level 100 characters after that. The treadmill of things to conquer is so well designed, I didn't want to get off even when I felt like I had seen 95% of what was on offer. The whole time you work towards the max level of 100, you're earning Paragon points to make your character even more deadly against your increasingly formidable foes, which serve as a carrot to keep grinding your way through Tree of Whisper bounties, Helltide events, and PvP zones. The endgame grind to reach that max level is practically perfect in terms of variety, replayability, build crafting, and more. Even if you somehow run out of things to do in the endgame for one character, rolling a second or third instantly becomes a fresh experience, since the campaign is optional after you beat it once, and certain account-wide bonuses.
That was another huge thing that, you know, after you beat the campaign with one character, so you want to create a new character, they added a skippable campaign option on the menu system there for when you create a new character after beating the campaign once. So that's fantastic. You don't have to keep replaying the campaign.
Instantly give your new character a boost. The most important of these unlocks is your mount, which allows your new characters to race off to faraway parts of the map so you can begin leveling with whichever activities you want. Tackling dungeons or participating in PvP from the fresh perspective of a whole new class immediately shakes off any dust Diablo 4's lengthy grind might gather and extends the good times even further than I thought possible. The only things that can occasionally knock that train off the rails are a few nasty bugs. For example, if you enjoy teleporting around as a sorcerer, be prepared to get stuck in the ground literally hundreds of times, like this. Thankfully, that can be resolved by just teleporting back to town, but I wasted a lot of time retracing my steps, only for it to happen again a few minutes later. There's also some weird rubber banding that sometimes goes on when you try to go from one region to another that prevents you from entering a zone. Most of Diablo 4's issues are extremely specific things like this that will probably get patched, but they were noticeable enough to tangibly impact my enjoyment a bit in the meantime.
Verdict.
Diablo 4 is a stunning sequel with near-perfect endgame and progression design that makes it absolutely excruciating to put down. The story is disappointing, despite still being a noticeable improvement over Diablo 3, and there are some
I don't think the story is disappointing at all. I don't understand why they're saying that.
annoying bugs that need squashing, but the combat, the loot game, and both the sights and sounds of this world are impressive enough to smooth over those rough edges. Diablo 4 takes the strategy of refining things the series already did so well rather than giving it a massive overhaul. And that careful and reverent path has shaped this massive sequel into one of the most polished ARPGs ever created, which makes slicing through the legions of the damned a hell of a good time.
I definitely give it a 9 out of 10 myself.
For more, check out our reviews of Gollum and The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Yeah, so review time, I myself would probably give this game a 9 out of 10. Honestly, I'd say this game, Diablo 4, is on the fast track of being Game of the Year upcoming, depending on what we got going on for the rest of the year, what other games we got coming out. And I'd still have to play through it all, right, to give my final verdict here, but I'd definitely say as of now, it's a 9 out of 10. Fast track to Game of the Year. Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on this, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hey guys, if you liked the video, make sure you head over to the page, hit that like button, scroll over, smash that subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get notified for future video drops, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.